And do you have your mic?
I officially call to order the Monterey Cultural Arts, Monterey Museum and Cultural Arts Commission meeting for September 7th, 2023. Francesca, do you want to make a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Castagna,
Here.
Commissioner Kimsey, Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Sovereign,
Here.
Commissioner Matowski,
Present.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Chair Thomas.
Here. All right. So. I have approval of the minutes. Are there any questions or anybody or comments about it? Anyone to make any approval of the last minute? I'll move. A second?
Second.
Approved. All right.
And
Nice. I'm sorry? Oh, you're right. we did.
I
Yeah,
have one question.
democratic thing.
Who seconded?
All those in
Thank-
favor say aye.
Who seconded?
Thank you. I
All
heard
right.
it was Sovereign.
Thank you. So are there any public comments? Anybody have any comments that's not on today's agenda?
If there is anyone who is joining us online or on Zoom, we ask you to raise your Zoom hand. For anyone who's not yet connected, you can join us by going to Zoom Gov. And if you dial toll free 833-568-8864, enter meeting ID 161-622-2299, followed by the pound sign. If prompted to enter participant ID, press pound. The agenda can be found at isearchmonterey.org. This meeting is also streamed live on the city's YouTube account at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10-second delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. And there are no public comments at this time, Chair Thomas.
Okay. So then we'll move on to informational reports and staff comments. Mr. Bryan?
That's me. Thank you, Chair Thomas. So welcome, Commissioner Rini. Thank you for joining us. I want to start off with the Path of History community meetings. We held our community meeting and then our 2 walking tours. And I collected the feedback from our commissioners regarding that and sent that off. I'm waiting for their report to come back September 15th. There is a final report that we send back to the Community Foundation for Monterey County regarding what we use the funds for in that. But the next steps for the path, I think that's going to be for us to review the report. I've asked our retired Museum and Cultural Arts Manager, Dennis Copeland, to assist us with that project as well, to review. So I'll be talking with Dennis about that as well, because I think he worked on the draft report back in 2019 and worked with the Museum Commission at that time. So there's a lot of great content about how do we merge the consultant report with what we actually want to do locally. So that's going to be in process. So we'll look forward to working with the museum subcommittee that we've been working with on this as well. That'll be coming up soon. Been working on researching Path of History content in the California History Room, Museum Archives, and Mayo Hazel Donald Library. I have 3 scheduled talks regarding the Path of History, which are on the then and now of the Monterey Path of History, because I think this has drawn up interest from people regarding seeing the news about the Path of History expanding. They want to know more about it. And thanks to Jordan and Andres, as well as Gary Spradlin from MHAA and all of the documents they have over there for all of the history of Monterey Path of History. So I feel like I've got a good overview of how that project started.
So when and where will those talks be held?
The first one is with the Native Daughters, and that's at Casa Serrano. That's Monday, the 11th, I believe, 7 p.m. There's also the Westerners group. I have the date on my calendar. I can email you, Commissioner. And the another one is with the Monterey Rotary over at, I believe that's on the 17th on a morning over at First Awakenings.
Could you or Francesca email that to us, the
Sure.
schedule and the location?
Sure, will do.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And been working with CSUMB service learners to update our content for the future of the Story mobile app. These are the Explore Monterey and the different tours. So right now, what I'm having one do is work on El Encinal Cemetery tour and going through and creating a walking tour of the different historic figures from El Encinal. And I'm also working with another intern regarding all of the 55 plus Path of History sites onto that app as well, because right now the different sites out there tend to be incomplete with all of the Path of History sites on a single map. So I want to just have it on a single map that's on there and build out the content. And our museums department already has a lot of these descriptions and done, but we just have to go out there, take the photos, geotag everything, and just build the actual website content. So we'll work with service learners on that. The Western Flyer is scheduled to return in Monterey Bay on Saturday, November 4th. So make sure to put that weekend on your calendar, possibly Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I've been in contact with Sherry Flummerfelt and their team regarding hosting some special programs and maybe some tours of the lab that weekend. So if folks are interested in connecting, please let me know, because we'd be happy to do some connections with the Western Flyer Foundation. But that's the date is actual. The boat is scheduled to return on the November 4th right now. And we received a grant from the community, from CHOMP from the Tyler Hart Institute to add an AED at Colton Hall. So that's going to be installed next week. We're going to just put it on top of a counter so that there's no damage to any part of the building on there. So looking forward to that. And those are automated external defibrillators. Those are when people like have heart attack. And I think because of the number of events that we've had there, and we have, any people at any age can have a heart issue. So we have a number of students coming through. So we felt it was important to add one of those on there. And I've been working with our local history librarian, Andres Garza, to apply for another round of the California Reveal digitization. So we've submitted the content from our Shades of Monterey, which was done in 3 stages over time. These were images that were basically community members had donated. These are the photos some of the photos that you will see inside of the library on the wall were families donated photos. And we had photo releases signed by all the people that donated all their photos before. So we already have all of that. It's just a matter of getting the approval from the state library to digitize, but felt that would help with California history, really telling the personal stories from Monterey that people have donated to us. So we know our Ray Ruppel images are currently being processed by California Reveal in the state library. Those were, I believe, silver nitrate negatives. Am I right, Commissioner Castagna? Do you remember that? Yeah. So the thing with some of those and some of our images, we will have to look at some point our storage of our images of our negatives, because silver nitrate can be very flammable. So how do we properly store some of those things? So we may need to work on that. But I actually physically drove those to Sacramento because we couldn't ship them on there. And lastly, if we have any questions, I want to thank Jordan Leininger for his service here. And I know Jordan's going to talk a little bit about his report, but Jordan will be leaving us soon for CSUMB, and he has a fantastic position lined up there, and really appreciate all of the partnership and the work that he's done and keeping all of our museums afloat and his leadership out there. So thank you, Jordan, and kudos to you in your new role. With that, happy to answer any questions.
I had one, Tim. I know you've kept me up to date because I'm a member of the Old Monterey Foundation, but I just wondered if you could speak to the commission on the Lower Presidio. I mean, the Army wrote a letter, I think almost a year ago, saying that they're taking back the lease as of August next year, 2024. In that letter, they're very cryptic. They say that they have it for they need it for their own uses, but more importantly, they don't speak to public access, what they're doing with the museum. And as far as I know, there have been no negotiations with the Army since last June. I mean, shouldn't the city be meeting with them or somebody discussing that?
So as far as I know, any of those discussions would be at the the level of Hans Uslar, our city manager with the Army, because I've not been part of any of those discussions. I've talked at different times with staff from the DLI and the Army, but they've made no statements about the loss of the Presidio Monterey Museum. We do also have the Sarah statue and the Sloat Monument. You know, we have other items there, which are basically, those items are never going to leave that space because, you know, that's a very sacred ground up there, and getting vehicles up there, I don't see any way that we could ever remove something like a Sarah monument out of there. But as well as for public access, I believe that was the past commander as well. So I don't know if they've been doing anything. That would have been the new, whether there's a new leadership, if that has changed, because their commanders change every 2 years from what I've known. I recently submitted just the activity report for the lower Presidio, what we've done over time, but haven't heard any feedback from the Army. And it was just something that we procedurally send in every year. I know they were looking at the contract for the child care center is one of the things that's coming up as well, but that's outside, you know, in the Presidio. But I don't know about the other parts. None of those have come to my plate as well as of right now.
Could you talk further with City Manager Hans Uslar and just put a status report on our next agenda?
Yeah,
Including the letter from the Army?
yeah, and what I've brought up with them is that I think that, you know, as we talked with the Old Monterey Foundation, the key thing is the access to the public access to the lower Presidio is the key. Like, you know, public access to all of our historical resources there. It's a very, you know, it's hugely historic place there here in Monterey and on the West Coast. So finding ways to continue to partner with them. But I'll talk with Hans again. Usually my meetings with Hans and Nat are once a month. And then the next one I have, I believe, is next Thursday. I tend to go. So I'll talk with him at that time.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Back to the path of history, there was supposed to be a mural.
Your mic, by the way.
There was supposed to be a mural on one of the walls on Alvarado down by the theater that's no longer there. And what's happening to that mural? And you were talking about bringing in more things into the path of history. Are they going to be integrated into that mural, or are we just going to ditch the whole idea of the mural?
I don't remember the idea of the mural. So remind me of that, because I know there were in the past, state parks had the 32 by 40 inch, I forget how many, there was either 10 or 15 maps that were done by the California Department of Recreation. They were done in the 1980s. That were added throughout the city. Those highlighted primarily California state park sites that had a path of history map. And those were added throughout that time. Are you speaking of those, or is this a different?
No, this was a different one, and it was supposed to be like 10 by 10
Yeah,
or
it was,
something.
I remember
it was located right behind the Portola Hotel in that area. Then Portola Hotel put up their green wall, their landscape wall, and they removed it. And as you were saying, Bob, one of the sites the city was considering was right by the Ocio Theater.
Right.
But I don't know. No, it's a very large mural. It's like what? It's way bigger than this painting.
Yeah,
probably.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed to me it was like 10 by
I
10.
remember it was supposed to be like a map of the path of history.
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a map of the original path of history. It's currently in the parking garage in our storage. Because we had that removed back when the Portola was redoing their exterior. And then I know we were, this is 2018 or 2019, we were talking about putting that same map, not the same graphic on the Ocio wall, which is right by the entrance to the older theater, not the Golden State, the smaller theater. And I know we were talking about putting like a vinyl or something up there that would last longer than having it on plywood. But I don't know what happened with those talks.
And none of those talks have come to my attention since I've been here in regarding adding a mural or any.
How do we revise that? Or as I was saying, or do we just ditch it?
Well, I think it would be, like as Jordan's saying, because if it's wood, there's one thing, like when we took down, I will say, Jordan and I were looking in the garage, a month ago at the Bruce Harris murals are in there, and those are full of termites. You know, and that's the thing about wood is that the plywood, it's going to get rotted, they rot and they get termites in there. So how do you get something that's on a panel? So number one, I would see something like that probably need to go through historic preservation or architectural review board based on where it is in the city. So the HPC commission possibly, as well as with those business owners. So whether it's if it's on a private property, who's going to pay? For
City
it?
owned.
It's city.
It's, yeah.
This is city owned. Okay. So then it would just be for us is working with, I would imagine if it's on city property, we would still want to go through HPC about doing an installation and then paying for just that piece. And I would say working with a sign company that would do something that would be similar to a lot of our interpretive signs, where the interpretive signs are on like a marine grade plywood, or they're on some kind of thing with aluminum composite, so that, and as Jordan was mentioning, something that's a recreation that we're not going to worry about, okay, in 5 to 10 years, this wood's going to deteriorate out there.
But that's, you know, if we're gonna remake it essentially, that brings up the whole idea of what is gonna go on it. I mean, this is that particular wall where I thought it was supposed to go is one where anybody walking down Alvarado that's headed for the plaza is gonna see it. And if that mural were there as a kind of a promotion of the path of history, and we happen to have the electronic connection below it so that people could begin to tune in to the whole idea of a path of history, I think that would be, I mean, it seems to me it's an opportunity to promote the path of history.
And I would say, you know, doing my research, the path of history has changed a number of times. So if it's the first path, which was actually a driving path, there was, you know, when they first promoted 35 sites, then 40 sites, then 44 sites, then 65 sites, then 54 sites, like the numbers have changed a number of times over history. So if it is the first path, that's a driving path. And that's not including all of the, you know, the sites are just going to be different. So if we did something new, I think that would open that discussion, and that would come up with whatever sign we want, I think would go up to historic preservation, because if it's something digital or if it's a historic image, is it this is then and this is now, like, is it the original path, you know, from Laura Bride Powers and Colonel Fitch, or is it the new one? Like, what do we actually want to put on there, and how do you want to highlight it? I will say, the thing that I'm also looking at is at some point, I think having the signs in front of each site needs to be updated, because the sites where we have, you know, the different historic houses all throughout, and different adobes and different buildings out there, the QR codes don't work right now. They literally don't work. They go to the old website that's no longer valid. So we have to get those replaced anyway. So whether we look at doing like a short history, like each building has like a little sign or things, you know, and if you talk to MHAA, the original signs that are in front of all these buildings around, you know, Chair Thomas asked me about the Washington Hotel, right? And the Washington Hotel sign, which has been missing for years. There's a number of signs. We have at least a dozen path of history marker signs that are just missing around town over time. So there's a lot of aspects to this where I think we would either want to do like individual signs or a large marker or what that is. And I think we need to get through to kind of figure out what kind of themes we want, what sites we want to add to that, and then look at a lot of the interpretation and get to there. I think it'd be great.
Well, it sounds like we need to get this report back
Yes.
so that we can then convene a discussion about the path of history, sort of a whole,
Okay, thank you.
a whole global picture of what the paths of history are going to be and how we're going to promote them and how people will encounter them.
Yes.
And this would be a part of it. It's just maybe one more item to add to the list to talk about when we get the report back.
And right, because I will add, I mean, the original path is 2.8 miles. And if we add on additional sites, like you're adding on a larger walk, and that was even when they looked at them, I've read a number of newspaper articles from the 60s and 70s that say or, you know, in the 1980s, when people go, when they went to 87, when they went to walking path, and they're saying, if you're going to walk it, do it over 3 days. You know, because basically, if you really want to see the sites and go visit places and that, you don't do it all at one
That's
time.
what
So
we want them to do. We want those nights in the hotels. Come on.
that's right. Exactly. So we just have to figure out how we do that. And then I'd love to work on that in the future.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
What was the date of the Western Flyer?
They are November 4th.
And that's going to be open to,
Yeah, it's open to the public. It's a big party kind of.
oh, okay.
Yeah, they're going to do a big event, but I've talked with them about possibly doing some private tours of the Ricketts Lab, the Pacific Biological Laboratory. So whether they do other events, just want to connect with the commissioners on that too.
Okay.
Any public comments?
There is a caller on Zoom, and if you would like to state your name, you may, and you can also unmute yourself and speak. And if you're not here for this item, then you can stay here. We do have a caller though with their hand up. Oh, their hand is down now. Okay, so no public comments right now.
Then I guess we'll move on to Jordan and the museum material.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I'd like to first point out that we had some fantastic attendance numbers the last 2 months compared to the last couple of years. At least for July, we kind of got to pre-COVID numbers, especially at Colton Hall. We had 2,001 visitors. So it's nice to see those numbers starting to come back. So to start with a 2-month report here. So I've been hanging some artwork, the city-owned artwork in the planning division this last month. They've been switching out some old artwork. There's been some new employees. And so it's nice to see some of the artwork come out of, you know, our collections that have been in there for many years. And to rotate the old ones back in there too, just to, you know, help with preservation. So in July, the Colton Hall Museum hosted 4 tours. This consisted of County Supervisor Supervisor Alejo's school program. He comes every year with the children. And we also had some exchange students from Dubrovnik come in at the same time. And so museum attendant Liz Jensen was to help out with that. And then things didn't line up directly. So Director Edwards helped out with both of those tours. So thank you to both of them for helping out with that, which we had 73 visitors in total come in. 4th of July was a success for Colton Hall this year. We had 1,106 covering Colton Hall because that's a lot of people. Kevin Handstick was also there for a little while, dressed up as Walter Colton. He came on his own accord. So thank you to Kevin for helping out as well. Let's see. Car Week was kind of slow for us. I was a little surprised, but we did get an all-women's car club who came into Colton Hall for a tour. And so I think there were about 31 visitors there. Let's see. So in July, we had a fundraiser with Alvarado Street Brewing. About a year ago, I was in contact with one of my contacts there where I came up with the idea of having them either brew an Ed Ricketts related beer or re-brew one of his favorite beers, Burgermeister. And so finally this year, they decided to make their own version of Burgermeister. And so they brewed it at their Carmel location, and let's see, what it was July. Sorry, my months are getting all. So in July, they had a fundraiser for us at their beer garden in the downtown location where they donated the whole proceeds of the keg to us. So we received $800, which went to the preservation of the Pacific Biological Laboratories. And so thank you to Alvarado Street Brewing for helping out with that, raising awareness for the lab and, you know, donating those funds. Let's see what else. Oh, we had a surprise visit at the Pacific Biological Laboratories second Saturday tours last month. Scott Ketchum, the son of Hank Ketchum, the Dennis the Menace artist, stopped in. He and his daughter were walking by, and he looked up across the street, and the front door was open, and he saw his father in the cardboard cutout that's sitting up there. So he decided to come in and started telling stories and learned some fun stuff. We learned that he has reel-to-reel recordings of parties at the lab just sitting at his house. So literally at these parties, the first person who would get there would press record. And then as the evening went on, it got, more wild. And then usually it ended in bongo sessions, he said. The bongos just got louder and louder as the evening went on. And so it was a real treat to be able to, speak with a relative of a lab member. And hopefully, Scott will think of donating those tapes to us. The transcripts of those would be amazing for, the history of that place, for the men's club. I mean, possibly, but he did not leave his contact information. I gave him my card, so I haven't heard from him since. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I mean, that would take some money. We'd have to take it to a specialist to record the reel-to-reel and see if they're in good enough condition that they can be. But unless anyone knows the Ketchum family here, I don't know if that'll happen.
For that would be Dottie Roberson. She was the executive director for the Ketchums, Clyde Roberson's wife.
Okay.
And she was executive director. And even after Hank Ketchum passed away, they had other people
Mhm.
turning out the cartoons. So I think if you contact Clyde, he may be of help.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like you guys have some homework. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. What else do we have here? All right. So Director Edwards and I met with the director and the archivist and the marketing director of the Steinbeck Center. Steinbeck Center has really been pushing to kind of get the historical and, just the local communities together for like events. And so we had lunch with them to go over some ideas, and they're really they've been really pushing on their social media to help out other people as well. For us, it's a lot of help because we don't have the staff or the time to fully promote, our social media. And so they started doing little things where they would do a promotion for us, or they do, another local entity. And so we're really grateful that they're reaching out to do this. They also have their Steinbeck Fair this month, I believe on the 30th, I think it is. They're having the Steinbeck Fair at downtown Salinas. They're closing off the street. I know the museums will have a booth there, and it'll be an opportunity for everyone to, promote their institution and sell items if they'd like. And they also threw a social mixer at the Steinbeck Center, and where we got to explore the museum and meet other people in the community. And so it's really appreciated that other local entities are looking out for, each other, extending a helping hand. Because I know a lot of institutions around here still haven't recovered from the pandemic. And that is, I think, the highlights of the last 2 months.
You got several private tours.
Mhm.
What are those? How do you-
If it's for the PBL, when it comes to private tour, it's usually just, Francesca can answer that better, but it's usually just someone wanting to come in and take a tour. So it's just just people visiting town and they want a private tour of the lab.
So there's no protocol set up to arrange a private tour if somebody wants one?
We're
Call.
working on streamlining that, but yeah, they usually just call or email through the website.
Mhm.
And then for those private tours, Francesca coordinates
Okay. I was
those.
curious.
Yeah.
And there is a charge for the Pacific Biological Lab, the private tours. So we do charge for an hour and a half of staff time for that. So there is there is like a DocuSign that they go through, but we are looking at a way to put up a form on our website so that people put in a request and say, I want to request a tour of Colton Hall, or request a tour of Presidio Monterey Museum, or a lab tour, because as Jordan mentions, he gets voice messages and I get voice messages, and I got an email this morning that says, I would like a tour. And I said, for my role, I said, okay, are you looking at the library? Are you looking at Presidio Museum? Are you looking at Colton Hall? Are you looking at Pacific Biological Laboratories? Because I need to know more information. So that's why we're looking at more of a form on the website, so that we can receive the content, and then we get notified, and then one of us can get back, and then we have to often, check with our docents, or it's one of us that opens up the building. So one of the staff is there to open up the building, and then we check with docents that are available to give those tours, because we have to have somebody in there for both, somebody to open the building, but then also somebody to lead the tour. So sometimes one of those is us doing the tours if we don't have docents available.
And then one final thing, the tours are limited to 15 total.
Correct. Because I think, are you guys reassessing the fire code?
We haven't looked there, but I do think some of those are actually in the original MOU as well,
Yeah.
which were the maximum number of people in the lab at a time. So part of that was in the lab that we did a max of 15 people on a tour.
So still 15 if anybody inquires. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, it's 15. I think it's technically 15 per room, but that makes it more difficult. So if we have more than 15, we split them up. And depending on the group and how much time they have, we'll have half start upstairs, half start downstairs, and then switch. But usually the private tours tend to fit within that 15 person.
Question for Jordan. You want to let us know a little bit about where you're going
Sure.
and when?
So I will be the Cal NAGPRA coordinator for Cal State Monterey Bay. And so Cal NAGPRA is the California Native American Graves Protection Repatriation. And so pretty much right now with the CSU system, I think all of the California State University schools have Native American collections, and there are very few schools that have properly processed and cataloged and submitted what they have to the state. And so the CSU right now is really putting the pressure on each university to process and submit the collections information to the universe or to the CSU system and then to the state. And what we're going to do is process. So with CSUMB, they have Native American collections, but 0% of it is accounted for. And so my job will be to process and put everything that the university has in its holdings and submit it to the state. And then once it's submitted to the state, we have to notify the local tribes if they would like the items back. And if they don't want the items back, then we have to maintain them until, time. They just break apart, or, at any time a local tribe could say, I want to see the collections, or we want to take these. And then so once we get through that process, like if a tribe comes to us, or if we offer it to a tribe, we put a notice to everyone who may lay claim to it. They have 30 days to make their claim. And then after that, we can repatriate the items. Fortunately, with CSUMB, there are little to no human remains. None of the items were taken from graves or burials. And so all of the sites were mostly excavated from the Carmel Mission, the San Carlos, the Monterey Mission, and then the
Royal Presidio. Chapel?
Batista, the Royal Presidio Chapel in San Juan. And so they were taken either from people started digging or excavating, improper, like they just put all the dirt to the side. So then the CSUMB archaeologist and his students would go through it and, sift it, get all the collections. And so the collection mostly consists of dirt, some shells, beads, pendants, things like that. There are some bones that were donated to the university at the university's beginning in 1993. And those are in the process of already being repatriated. So everything I'll be doing is going box by box, piece by piece, cataloging, processing everything, and putting it into a database, and then submitting it to CalNAGPRA, and then letting the local tribes know.
And what are we going to do about replacing Jordan?
Well, that'll be, I have to have discussions with the city manager's office and HR and finance, all of that about kind of the next steps for that. So I don't have a plan right now. We just heard I got a 2-week notice from Jordan, so I don't have a staffing plan yet. So as of right now, any requests that you have, or please just filter them through myself and Francesca, because we'll be taking a lot of things of, the any of the tours and any of those requests that come in like that. We'll be coordinating with our docents, doing our, second Saturday tours at PBL and all of those different things, as well as working with the museum attendants that do Colton Hall. And I'll be working on some special projects with Dennis as of in the coming weeks as well. But yeah, just continue to communicate with me anything that coming up.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And impressed as always as you've gone through these of your contacts and the work you do, and I'm sure we're going to be pressed to replace you. But it struck me too that things like decorating for the 4th of July, the commission used to be called upon to help decorate for various holidays. I think at least I'm personally willing to put in a lot more hours than I am in supporting the functions of the commission and of the museums. We used to have a requirement that one of the commissioners be at PBL when it's open, but I think we all can do a lot more than we have, and we may need to be in the next period. And I, for one, stand ready to contribute more than I have lately.
Good point.
We appreciate it.
I'd like to say too, Jordan, you'll be missed.
Yeah.
And I worked with Jordan for a while, and I really appreciate all your work you've done. And you've been very helpful to me over the years. And so I will probably still count on you from time to time. So thank you for all the stuff that you did.
What a
And
round of applause for Jordan.
Thank you, everyone.
That brings to mind, particularly if we're going to have to be in at least short term, at least replacing some of Jordan's function, would there be a way to hire Jordan to train some of us in some of the functions he's done and things that we ought to be doing, it seems to me.
I don't know if Director Edwards can afford me. I don't know.
anybody else have any questions? Any public comments?
If there is anyone who would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. There are no public comments, Chair Thomas.
And I can see, unless they're invisible, there's nobody out there to any comment. So we're now to the point of the utility box program.
Thank you, Chair Thomas. So this was actually one of the items that was on our strategic plan for earlier in the year, as well, was revisiting this project. So I had this on the upcoming agenda before I learned of Jordan's departure. So wasn't planning on adding more work with losing staff, but here we are. This is something that has come to my attention from multiple people in the community asking about this as well, regarding the utility box art program, because it is not visible on the website right now. There was an application form. There was what do you call that? The council reviewed, Museums Commission reviewed everything on there in terms of going through with the program. Since that time, I've talked with the planning department, and I know Francesca's talked to the traffic engineering department regarding our inventory, because one of the things is we wanted to look at was what that inventory that we had back in 2019 that was part of the form. Is this correct? Are these projects, or how are we accepting these things? Are these correct? And I bring these up because what when we come across the first ones that were done, there were 4 that have been painted so far. They had 4 painted and 3 that were wrapped. And the vinyl wraps were done as, I believe, by CTAC. They were done by transportation. They're transportation safety wraps. They're not artistic kind of wraps, as far as I'm aware. And the part about this utility box art program is that we can paint or do ones on our utility boxes. So these are, the reason that traffic engineering is involved is because these are generally traffic signal boxes that would be painted. The utility boxes by PG&E or other kind of entities out there are not ours. So those are not going to be something that we would be involved in on that side. So I think one of the things that I would like to discuss on there is the funding, because I know other cities do put in a stipend for the artists, whether that's paying for art materials or paying for a vinyl wrap. Looked at other places that do solely vinyl wraps and digital art. Some places do that specifically because of having to deal with people painting on site near traffic signals, can be a potentially a hazardous place to do that. And we also looked at what the number of utility boxes are, like the inventory, to see, are these being replaced? Are these valid or whatever? So it looks like, just to give you an overview, I believe there's, if the numbers are correct, I think there was 31 boxes that are potential for this in different areas of the city. So these are all throughout the city that we would potentially look at. And I think my recommendation would be to look at just a small number of them, basically try to figure out, not open up all of them at once, but to really focus on a few neighborhoods and highlight a couple, rather than doing the entire project at one scope, doing, 4 to 6 at a time, and then having an invitation for artists to submit their work and figuring out whether we want to do painting or vinyl wraps. And we would work with traffic engineering on a lot of that aspect on there. And looking forward to opening this, this fiscal year, 2023 and 2024. But happy to hear any feedback or thoughts you guys have on this project. And I know it does become something where when the cost can be a barrier, for people, if they're paying for the permits or paying for all of these things on their own time, we could either have it on the artist to pay this, or we could figure out how else we would cover this cost. So just want to bring these to your attention.
If you're going to, I think prioritizing is a good idea. And I would suggest the most heavily trafficked area. In other words, the boxes that will be seen by the most people would be the first ones to offer.
Brian and I talked briefly about this, and I know a local council member said some artists were discouraged about applying just because of the bureaucracy, insurance, permit, traffic, blah, blah, blah. I wondered if it would make sense to go with an umbrella permit given to an organization like YAC, the Youth Artists Collective, and then they take out one permit. And I'm sure they can get a grant through the Community Foundation or the Arts Council, and do a group of them. They have a lot of willing artists there. So my suggestion would be, because it would be difficult for an individual artist, I think, just to go through and incur all those costs.
And can I add on that too, just that one of the things to think about that I've, in my communications with other places that have done this, is sometimes people, along with what you're saying, Commissioner Castagna, the highly traffic, because I know that some of our neighbors in, North Fremont have said, hey, we want more art, you know, in this neighborhood as well, is to focus on areas where the boxes will be replaced, because you get them before you do the install, you know, you paint them off site, right? Rather than painting, like if you know you're going to be shipping it and getting something like that, you paint it in an area where you know you have a secured area where if you're going to receive certain ones, you can paint it. And then when they do the install is with the painted box. So that's been done, I think, with some agencies. And I think the other part was that, like, even with us, with the library, we did our mural on the terrace and we had to have graffiti, you know, paint done over it. And it was very specific from the city side of, like, we wanted a graffiti protectant on those kind of things. And that's what's the art. Is some places do want digital art, like vinyl wraps, because then the vinyl can be replaced, you know, with damage. So all of those things come into place too.
Is there a criteria to the art itself that will reflect the neighborhood it is in, or can they just, whatever the artist wants to do?
We had some themes in the 2019 draft. And so I think that would be a good thing to kind of work with this commission on, is figuring out, do we highlight a specific, you know, like I mentioned, 4 to 6 of them highlight what our theme is, you know, whether that's Monterey history or, you know, immigration, whatever it is we want to highlight on there, do a theme of art like this. And then my thought is you basically give them a template of what that would be. And so some person actually draws up and gives you a sample of their template. This is what you're going to be. So then we can come back to the commission to review all of that and fit it and try to fit them in that themes. But I believe the original thought was that certain neighborhoods would have certain themes. So Old Town would have different themes than North Fremont or, you know,
New Monterey.
New Monterey. Yeah.
Yeah, New Monterey talked about doing historic buildings that aren't there anymore. Like we had a lumber yard there in New Monterey along Lighthouse and other things like that. But again, the cost to the artist was the barrier. It just stopped it cold.
Yeah.
The merchants in the area were all up for it. But I couldn't get any of them to pick up the checkbook and start writing. And the ones that have been done were all done by the high school
Right.
under the original direction of the art teacher at the high school. So that's another group, but again, they would have to find funding, and being able to do it off-site would be a good idea. I mean, that's a sort of an imperative, I think, because with the last one they did, which isn't really finished, in my opinion, they were out in the street and it was not good. But that was not actually the teacher involved at that point. It was a summer project and it was being managed by a parent, unfortunately or fortunately. So, yes, go.
All right. So yeah, any additional, just let us know, but we'll be working on a revised application and bringing it back after speaking with the other departments on this with some recommendations for going forward. But I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that the original form that we were looking at does, in my mind, does need to be revised in how we do this, and figuring out specifics for what we're going to do going forward, and possibly looking in the direction of any kind of sponsors out there for that.
Anybody else have any
Yeah.
public comments?
If there is anyone listening online that would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. Chair Thomas, there are no public comments.
Okay, so we're now to the point of commissioner comments. John?
I was wondering if there's going to be a celebration for Constitution Day.
Yeah, so I've been in contact with Kevin Handstick and his troop that we are going to do the Constitution reenactment again. So we do have that. We do have that planned. Yes.
If you've not seen that, that is one of the best things I have
Mhm.
really gets the point across.
Thank you. Thank you. And second comment is about Jordan, who has done a super job since I've been on the commission. I know we've spoken about that several times, how he gets as much work done as he does. It's beyond me. And no one is irreplaceable. I know that from my experience, but he comes close, let me tell you. Thank you very much, Jordan.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome.
Yes, I'd like to say that I'm very concerned about the loss of Jordan and, you know, that we may go into a period where we drift even farther from the actions that we used to be able to perform. We have coming up the 1776 250, what am I? Yeah.
We did that one.
And the city ought to be doing something. Monterey is an important part of the history of the US and I see nothing happening. It just worries me greatly that we're gonna drop into even a deeper ditch than we have been since the COVID problem. I also compliment Jordan on what he's done, but we need to have a real program for where we're going with, you know, some direction and some contact with the city council, which we are supposed to be advising. And yet, you know, I don't see anything coming forward from us saying, here's opportunities that we ought to be taking.
Well, I would certainly echo Mike in that vein. What's happening at the NCIP level? They've been meeting over the summer. Do we know anything about the projects that were submitted on our behalf?
Last time I looked, I haven't been on there. There were no projects approved regarding museums on that list, as far as I'm aware, the last time I looked.
That's just. Me, want to congratulate Jordan again for seizing an opportunity to develop a carpool to work. And greatly appreciate his work all these years. That was all.
I will make a comment if you.
Yeah.
Mind me, I order. I'm very pleased to be here, part of this. I hope it was on. Sorry. Pleased to be here as part of this group. And I hope we can do a lot of new things. One thing near and dear to my heart is the Monterey mural. And I'd like to see plaques or whatever put there and that brought to people's attention more. And I'm happy to work on any of these things. And the Constitution Day, if you can make known what kind of work or volunteers you need, I'm happy to be there. Also, would it be possible maybe for each of the commissioners to take one particular item that we have and be the lead person on that, rather than just everyone trying to work on everything? I think if we focused a little more, perhaps we could achieve a little more. And Jordan, as I mentioned to you before, you were just terrific and we're certainly going to miss you. And I hope we will see you in the future as a consultant or whatever.
So I just want to welcome our newest commissioner to
Thank you.
here. Well, thank you. I think you have some really bringing a lot of new vitality to the group and have some really good ideas. So thank you. So anybody else have anything else? Then I think we call the meeting, adjourn the meeting.